Welcome to another Sport Bike Haven Productions. I was recently asked by a follower on Instagram what bike I think would be better to start on, the Yamaha R7 or the Kawasaki ZX6R, and well, I found it tough to give a definitive answer because I really believe a lot of that depends on the individual picking the bike. I will give some thoughts on things that I consider really important to consider when picking out your first bike. So one thing that I would recommend if you are trying to start out on a ZX6R, one big question is, can you afford it? Now, the ZX6R is a more powerful bike. It's a race replica, more expensive, higher insurance costs, higher maintenance costs, and you know, you really don't want to be strapping yourself so tightly that it's hard to really afford to ride it, or you know, maybe buy accessories or anything like that for it. So I think one good place to consider is the budget when starting out. And while the budget is hugely important, another thing that I would consider maybe even more important is your own self-discipline as a rider. Now, if you want to start on a ZX6R, that bike has much more power than an R7. Probably in the neighborhood of maybe like 30% more power. It's a fast bike. And well, it's not the fastest bike out there. Even the ZX6R can get away from a new rider. So if you are going to choose the ZX6R, I really think that you need to know yourself and know that you can practice a certain level of self-discipline when riding such a powerful motorcycle. You need to be aware of your surroundings, you need to know the road, and you need to make smart and safe decisions in all types of traffic situations and road conditions. But I think if you are a very self-disciplined rider, you know, and you can make good choices depending on, you know, the road conditions, time of day, traffic conditions, how well you know the road, riding in big groups, if you can make good decisions in all those types of circumstances, I think the ZX6R is a fine bike to start on. Like I said, I really think it's just as much or more about the rider than it is the bike. I mean, people start on bikes as small as, you know, maybe they started on a scooter, like a 50cc Spree, or maybe they started on a Z125 or a Honda Grom maybe. And there's people that started on a 1000 or a, you know, Suzuki Hayabusa. You have all different types of people, but you really need to search your own self and kind of make a good decision for yourself, you know. So now I want to talk about the R7. I think the R7 is a great bike. I think it, while it does have less power than the Kawasaki ZX6R, I think it has enough power to not be bored. Like, I'm saying that even though that the R7 has much less power, a good rider can keep up through most situations with the faster bikes. I mean, like, you know, a road like this where there's lots of twists and turns, you know, a bike like this being a little bit lighter, and you know, you can really get into the full power of the bike rather than being, you know, kind of stifled with too much power. So I think the R7 is a great choice. Not only is it's a cheaper bike to buy by several $1000s, but it's also cheaper to insure and cheaper to maintain. So, you know, I think it's a great choice. As far as saving a little bit money on the two bikes. Also, I don't think that you're going to get bored with the power of R7. Like I said, a good rider will be able to keep up with the bigger bikes, especially on a road like this where there's lots of twists and turns, and you know, it's not just like a straight line to 150 miles an hour or something. So, you know, and like I was saying before, you know, the R7, you know, it isn't quite as punchy as the ZX6R, so I think it has a little bit more give in the power sense, where, you know, a bike like this can still get away from you quite easily if you let it, but not quite as much as the Kawasaki would, you know. And it's going to be the same thing, you know, if you're going to get like an R6 or a CBR 600 or a GSXR 600, you know, all those bikes have are like race replica and are much more powerful than the R7. So, you know, same considerations all around. So in general, you know, if I was going to answer this question quickly, in general, for most people, I probably would recommend the R7 as a starter bike. You know, it has enough power, it's a little bit cheaper, it's not something that you're just going to get bored on right away. So with all those things being said, I think it's a great bike to choose to start out on. And I would also like to mention a couple other bikes and make a couple of my points even a little bit better. So, like I said, it really depends a lot on the rider, especially on roads like this. The smaller bikes can definitely keep up with the bigger bikes, you know, depending on the rider. And I would say even a smaller bike, something like the Yamaha R3, the Duke, the KTM Duke 390, I believe that's what it is. Also something like the Ninja 500 or a CBR 500. All those bikes are another great choice in the sense that they're all even cheaper than the R7. And, you know, like I'm pretty impressed by the Ninja 500 right now. I haven't had a chance to ride it. I would really like to, but I think for the price, you know, it's so much cheaper than the R7, and you get almost as much bike. I mean, the R7 maybe has like 20% more power, and that's a difference, but the Ninja 500, in all honesty, you know, that bike can go on the highway, it can cruise at highway speeds all day, no problems there. And, you know, a good rider on a Ninja 500 is still going to be able to keep up with bigger bikes. So I think with something like the Ninja 500, you really get a lot of motorcycle for your buck. You know, especially when you compare it to like an R3 or something, you know, you just get so much more power for just like a slightly increased amount of money, if not dang near the same price. So, you know, I'm a big, huge Kawasaki fan. I would love to recommend the R6 to anyone really, but you know, the main thing that's important is staying safe while riding, and a lot of that is picking a good bike and staying within your limits. So in most situations, I'd probably recommend the R7 to most people just starting out. And even if I was to go a step further, for a beginner, I think that, you know, something like the Ninja 500 would be just fine for most beginners to start on. So that kind of wraps up my thoughts on some beginner sport bikes. You know, I specifically wanted to answer that question from my follower and do the best I can, and, you know, added a little bit of my thoughts and considerations in there. So I hope that helps anyone. If you enjoyed this video, if you found it helpful, please leave a like, leave a comment, consider subscribing. That really helps a lot. And I thank you for watching this video. I hope you have a great day, and we will see you in the next one.